So I'm delighted to welcome once again to the stage Paul Griffiths, the Chief Executive of Dubai Airports. Here we are again, 12 months later. And I was just looking at your numbers. You've just put out your latest numbers, haven't you? Just for the first half, 49% jump in passenger traffic. You're back up to pre-pandemic levels. So much so you've adjusted your forecast for the whole year for 2023, back up to 85 million passengers.
Actually, we changed it again this week. It's now 87.
Oh, there we go. What does that look like in practice? What has this last year looked like in getting back to that sort of traffic?
Well, I think the first thing, of course, is that we abridged Newton's third law, which was for every pandemic, there's going to be an equal and opposite recovery. And we foresaw that coming. And although we made strenuous and very stringent cuts to the business during the course of the pandemic, we didn't do anything that would dampen our enthusiasm and capability to recover very quickly, because we knew it was going to be quite an onslaught. There's nothing about human behavior that is more predictable than the demand that you create by creating a shortage of something.
Yeah.
You know, if you're not selling something in a shop, you just stamp limited edition on it and it flies off the shelves, you know.
And there are different levels of bounce back. We know that different countries, different airports have dealt with this in very different ways. What would you say is your modus operandi? How would you characterize how you cope with that bounce back?
Well, I think the thing is, you've got to look at the demographics of the UAE. We are a relatively small country, and only 9% of the population is actually indigenous UAE residents. So that's the corollary to that is 91% comes from elsewhere.
Yep.
And that huge global mobility that we've got in our employment population means that we can source from anywhere in the world. And if one particular market was struggling, we can go to another one. So we had huge flexibility when it came to rehiring. The other thing is we made a major change to move away from the in-source model for a lot of our activities, such as facility management, engineering support, frontline hospitality. All of those things are now in the hands of performance-based partnership agreements, which have been highly productive. We brought those in during the pandemic, and we put the emphasis on training and readiness. And then once the pandemic subsided and we saw demand explode, we were ready with a fully trained and motivated workforce to deliver at the highest level. And because we're targeting those partners through KPIs, they're not just cost, they're service related, customer feedback related, we were able to deliver, I think, a quantum leap in service where many other airports were struggling.
Yeah, and that service is the important point, isn't it? Because it's easy for that to be the first thing that goes out the window. When you get a bounce back in traffic, the first thing that often suffers is service, whether it's personal service, hands-on, frontline service. How do you use technology to let you focus more of that energy and effort from your people on the front line to keep service levels the same, even though passenger numbers are soaring?
Well, I think it comes at the first understanding of what business you're in. And if you are an infrastructure manager, then you look after the infrastructure. Now, to me, airports have never been about infrastructure management. That is a passive consequence of the main activity that we're in. We are in fair and square, the hospitality business. We're a key part of the supply chain for our airline customers who market and attract the consumer from whom we benefit. So if you recognize you are in the business of delighting people, then you can deploy your technology to support that initiative. And actually, what we've been doing is eradicating a lot of product. We've been trying to say that actually, if you talk to the average customer, and I'm sure if I took a poll here, everyone would say they are happier with the lowest amount of possible interface with an airport product. So speed is absolutely of the essence. So technology has got to deliver speed and passenger convenience first and foremost. And we're just starting on a new JV with our immigration partners to try and actually bring the immigration process and the check-in process into a single transaction. So once you've dropped your bag, you just literally go straight to your gate or straight to the concourse. That will cut out yet another step. We've already got facial recognition for immigration, both inbound and outbound, so you can actually go through immigration both ways without taking your passport out of your pocket. So if you look at technology as a way of facilitating customer service and eliminating those tiresome, gruesome steps that airports for decades have been subjecting their customers to, and if you deal with those processes with the absolute venom and hatred they deserve, then you can get the priorities right. And that's what we've done. We've been relentlessly campaigning on behalf of our customers to eliminate some of those things that irritate them the most.
Venom and hatred is such a good motivator, don't you think? Talk to me about how that works in practice, because it's sort of the holy grail, isn't it? That idea that we can breeze through immigration, we can breeze through security without touching anything. That involves a lot of data sharing. It involves a lot of departments not working in silos, and we know that's not always the case. How do you break down those barriers to make something like that project happen?
Well, I think the first thing, you've got to take the fear away. What is everyone so afraid of? Are they afraid about their own personal situation, about employment?
But is it driven by passengers or by governments?
Well, it's got to be driven by the organisations such as airports that have the influence over the process on behalf of the passenger. And I think the problem is people are not really looking across the whole spectrum of what technology can enable when they're thinking about solutions. They're talking about the fear. What happens if we share that data with that entity? You know, that is a problem for us. But actually, what data do we really have to share? When I am trying to say, right, when someone checks in, that information is already held by immigration authorities anyway. We're not asking for name, addresses, bank details, all of those things. What we're actually saying is just give us a red or green data signature. Is this person good to go or not? If it's green, let them through. If it's red, take them aside and have a conversation. We're not looking for data sharing. We're just looking for the very quick exchange of tokens to say it's clear to move ahead, that sort of thing.
And one great example of this is OneDXB. Tell me about that project, because this is a perfect example of breaking down those walls, isn't it, between different departments that make up an airport operation. What does OneDXB do?
Well, we're very fortunate in the UAE. We are not subject to the fickle nature of democracy where, you know, political agendas change the whole time. And the good thing is the city has been focused for decades on creating an environment that is properly joined up. We absolutely know that we are part of the GDP of the city, and without the city, the airport wouldn't exist, and without the airport, the city wouldn't exist. So that sort of symbiotic relationship already exists and is well understood at a high level. So when you stand up in a room and you've got multiple partners there representing, you know, the Department of Tourism, Immigration, Police, Customs, Security, all of those entities, it's very easy to talk a common language that everyone understands. You know, we are here to make Dubai the #1 city in the world with the best airport, the best hotels, the best accommodation, the best tourists, you know, the best margins of safety, all of those things. And therefore, if we work together and aim to delight the customer by working on initiatives cross-culturally, collaboratively across technology platforms to bring things together to make that result, it's much easier to have that conversation than where you're in a room where people are saying, yeah, but my government allocated budget doesn't allow me to do that. You know, try and have a discussion about demand responsive immigration manpower across most airports in the world, and you will just get a blank response. We actually said, right, after the pandemic, you know, and Expo was during the pandemic, we had huge demand for Expo. We had to have a solution which was demand responsive. We helped the immigration service come up with a rostering pattern that actually met the peaks and troughs of demand through the airport. Something that sounds basically fairly simple.
Well, then that's the point, isn't it? Because, you know, it's about that big blue sky thinking, but some of it is really procedural day to day. And I'm thinking, you know, a delayed flight comes in, so straight away, you know, you're going to have a bottleneck with immigration baggage, and it's about allocating resources to the right places at the right time.
Well, it is, and it's having the right partnerships, and the back end is incredibly important as well. We've invested hugely in technology within our Air Operations Control Centre, which has brought people together, and every single stakeholder that has a say or a responsibility in running the airport is present in that control centre. So ambulance services, police, security, customs, immigration, they are all present. Ground handlers, airlines, they're all there, and they can see on the screens in front of them when situations unfold, and they can make rapid decisions. So, you know, we aim to get baggage on the belt within minutes, so that when people come through the very quick immigration service, they don't have to wait. They can pick up their bag and go. And let's face it, speed is actually a function of capacity. If you've got space and flow rate, you've got capacity. So if you double the space, that's very expensive. You double the flow rate, you've got the same result, but it's much cheaper to invest in technology to speed people through a process. And actually, people prefer that because the interface is lower.
I mean, and these are absolutely the things that all need to work in tandem, aren't they? It's no good having immigration that works if baggage is not there. And talk to me about collaborations. I mean, you've touched on the idea that some of these are deals with private organisations that will be judged on their delivery. Talk to me about what you're doing with the RTA and DUA, because that's about sustainability as well. Smart cities, sustainability, and we know increasingly the focus is in that area.
Well, I think the thing is that airports are translate modes, don't they? You arrive by one mode of transport, be it car, taxi, rail, etc., and you leave by air, and the reverse on arrival. And what we are trying to do is facilitate the most efficient translation from mode to mode. So we're talking with the RTA about all sorts of things. Latest discussion we've had about integrated vertiports. Can we actually facilitate flying taxis and the like, and have a very smooth and efficient way of getting people from aeroplane to vertiport in the closest and quickest possible time? So all sorts of things are going on. Rail, I think, is going to play an important part in the future of airports, because airports actually are more successful when they have good network integration with other modes of transport rather than their specific location within or without a city. So that's going to be more important. Modal share, I think, will change because of sustainability reasons. But I think you'll find that airport capacity in many countries is actually not, there's no shortage of it, it's just in the wrong place. So if we address the accessibility by road and rail, we will be able to make better use of existing airport capacity.
We're going to talk about DWC, Dubai World Central, a bit later, because I know you're going to stay for the panel for us. But talk to me about the blueprint there, because you have a pretty unique opportunity with DWC, don't you, to get it right, no pressure. You have the opportunity, the resources, the space, and the blank canvas to do this well. What is going through your mind right now about how you make sure that that airport works when it opens?
Well, let me ask a question. What is the sense when people start from multiple locations to go on a journey, and they end up getting on aeroplanes at multiple gates and multiple concourses? What is the sense of creating an hourglass where you force literally millions of people through the same pinch points of security, check-in, immigration, and then redistribute again? What a waste of time that is. And if we could think of a way of keeping the many-to-many interface as intact as possible, then surely that's the nut we've got to crack for an airport like DWC. And I think the thing is, what we've got to do is facilitate the journeys of 250 million individuals every year, which is going to be the ultimate capacity of DWC. But we've got to somehow maintain some sort of intimacy, and that, I think, is the question. Now, I think the view is that actually, by the time we open DWC, whenever that may be, the idea of taking someone to a central location to check in, technology will have removed.
Yeah.
And I think what we've got to do is think about the modal translation. Can we actually capture people at multiple points at the start of their journey near to their, yes, off-site, near to their home or office? And can we take them specifically to within 500 meters of where their aircraft is departing? So instead of going through a central check-in terminal, can we actually get a rail system that will deal with both baggage and people at a point of origin outside the airport and take them to directly within 500 meters of their gate? In other words, have multiple stops inside the airport where people can just translate from home directly to plane without going through all of those very tiresome processes that are centralized and create queues and delay. That, to me, is the nut to crack.
And it's a very nice point to tease our session a little later. We'll talk more about that when you join us for the panel. Paul, for now, lovely to see you. Thank you so much. Ladies and gents, Paul Griffiths, Dubai Airport.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you. That's so short.